Greetings. I'm Richard Rhoda, and I'm the instructor for ELPA 7110 this semester. That's the Community Colleges of the United States. This is going to be a brief video in which I introduce myself to you as well as a bit of introduction to the course. There will be a separate video more specifically about the course. Let me begin with a heads up. Your first assignment for the class is going to be putting together a video self-introduction of yourself, much like what I'm doing right now. If you have concerns about how to do that, in the D2L course site, the site for this course, are some instructions there, plus they'll link to a help as well as a phone number or an email address for a help desk. So nothing, don't worry about it. It'd be very straightforward, but just 3 to 5 minutes of an introduction of yourself that gets into your background, your education so far, your career so far, and then looking ahead if you have any specific interests that you would like to pursue. So again, just so and your classmates get to know you as well. And first I should say, welcome to the cohort. You may be aware this is the second year of the Community College Leadership Certificate Program at ETSU, and last year was a great success, and I'm sure this one will be as well, but congratulations for being nominated and admitted to the program. So, now a few words about me. I am the director of the Center for Community College Leadership at ETSU, and I teach as an adjunct faculty member for the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. In the way of my background, I was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Both of my parents were educators. My mother was an elementary school teacher. My father was a chemistry professor at the university level. I sometimes say I never had a chance to think about anything else, but that's not quite true. But anyway, education was very much a part of my childhood and that of my sister. We were just fortunate. That was something my parents believed in, they did, and so it wears off on you. I was educated in public schools in Westfield, New Jersey, and Suffern, New York. I started my higher education at a community college where we were living in New York. There was a brand new community college. All the community colleges were new at that time. This was in the mid-1960s. And the arrangement was what we now call dual admissions, but I was allowed to take one course in the fall semester of my senior year of high school, one in my the spring semester, and so that was my introduction to higher education. It has made a lasting impression. I came to Tennessee to attend Vanderbilt University, where I earned three degrees, a BA in history, an MA in education, and then the PhD in higher education administration. In my undergraduate years at Vanderbilt, that was the late 60s, early 70s, what an exciting time to be in college. And again, I think that influenced my decision to seek higher education as a career. But as you're aware, there were booming enrollments. Campuses were alive in many good ways, some not so good ways, campus unrest, civil rights, women's rights. But higher education was in fact the place. It was just an exciting enterprise. All of my career has been in higher education in Tennessee. I started, my first real job was in the research office of the Tennessee Board of Regents, and that's while I was finishing up my master's degree. That was an interesting place. Well, I ended up being there 12 years at the Board of Regents, and the last 5 of those years was as executive assistant to the chancellor. But what I was going to say is that was an interesting time and place to be because the Board of Regents had just been created by the Tennessee General Assembly the year before. So everything was new, the system was new, I was new, but how do you go about putting together a set of policies? At that time, it was the universities as well as the community colleges coming together. They had been governed by the State Board of Education that also had responsibility for K-12 and special schools. So this was a big departure, and again, it was an exciting place to be. It was also interesting to be working on my graduate degree while I was working there because I was reading about things that then were going to take place at the office. After that, I worked for 5 years in the administration of Tennessee State University, and that was an incredible assignment. The state was embroiled in a desegregation lawsuit, higher education desegregation lawsuit, and TSU, as the state's historically black public university, was very much in the middle of all that. It was a central figure. And much of my job was related to that lawsuit and trying to diversify TSU. After TSU, I returned to the Board of Regents as a vice chancellor, and over the next few years in that capacity, I also held a number of interim appointments. I was president of Nashville State, which is now a community college. At that time, it was still a technical institute, Austin Peay State University, and then briefly as a chancellor of the Board of Regents. So again, as far as a career, that was something you don't plan for, but certainly a direction that I took and very much appreciated. That period of time, and that would have been the early 1990s. In Tennessee higher education, budget issues were looming, not as severe as what would come later on, but that was a big part of it. Campus leadership turnovers, some very much related to the budget issues, but it was, again, it was a moment, a defining moment in Tennessee higher education. Following that, I taught and helped start a policy center back at Vanderbilt. And what was interesting as far as my interest, the policy center really dealt more with K-12. And so that took me way outside my comfort zone, but I certainly appreciated it. But those were in the early days of developing, thinking big thoughts about ultimately those were the early years of Common Core, although it certainly didn't have that name, but that was basically what we were working on. So, 1997, I was appointed as executive director of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and that's how I concluded that part of my career. I was there for 17 years at THEC in Nashville, and again, those 17 years, some were better than others, but a great deal was done, and there was a lot of serendipity involved, but there was a lot of alignment between public policy, the governors at the time, but there were major reform issues in Tennessee higher education, and THEC had the opportunity to be a big player in that, and specifically the lottery scholarship program in the early 2000s, the Complete College Tennessee Act in 2010, and then more recently the Drive to 55, and that's where I dropped off, but since then has been the Focus Act. But anyway, so that's kind of my career. I retired a little over 2 years ago from THEC, from the state, and began teaching here at ETSU in the doctoral program, in the EDD program. And then last year, at this time, is when the Center for Community College Leadership was established at ETSU, and I was asked to be director. And then soon after that, the Dean of Education here at ETSU stepped down, and I was asked to be the acting dean. So I did that for 9 months and just wrapped that up at the beginning of summer. So that's my self-introduction. I look forward to meeting you by video and then in person at our weekend seminars. I look forward to seeing your introductory videos. I'll say this again, but let me think of it while I'm thinking of it now. I want to mention throughout the course, even when I'm not your instructor, don't ever hesitate to contact me. My contact information is on the syllabus, so whether it's questions, concerns, comments, please don't hesitate ever to give me a call. So thank you for your attention, and here's to a good semester.